only you. A cosmic dance, the truth so true. From the ether to the earthly plane, all you seek, you can attain. The quantum flow, the light you hold, creates the story that will unfold. Every thought and step you make, the universe is yours to take. It starts with you, the mirror's hue, infinite skies reflecting you. From the void, you birth the light. Through the shadows, your soul takes flight. The winds will shift, its timeless bend. Every cycle begins again. Your energy builds, it flows, it streams, aligning rims, igniting your dream. Each vibration, each sacred sound, a universe, moves resound. You are the spark, divine and true, illuminating. It's all you do. Just remember, it starts with you, the mirror's hue, infinite skies reflecting you. From the void, you birth the light. Through the shadows, your soul ignites. The path within, the path divine. Through space, your world aligns. Every rise, every fall, you're connected to it all. It starts with you, the quantum view, manifesting dreams like the morning dew. From the stillness, creation flows. Through the darkness, your spirit knows. It starts with you, only you. Through dimension, through the veil, the sacred truth, and you prevail. Now infinite, clear, and true. This road ahead, it's made for you. It all begins and ends with you. Even the chaos, through the flame, you rise anew, never the same. Every heartbeat, every sign weaves your essence, soaring high. The cosmos bends to your command. Creation blooms within your hand. It starts with you, only you, only you. It starts with you. Welcome in the space, family. Happy, what's today? Tuesday. Come in and hold space with me for a little while. We're going to be unpacking the topic of oppression tonight. So come in and hold space with me as we have a conversation tonight. I'm trying to get my music going. Y'all give me just a bit and we'll get to the meat of this topic. I don't know what that is. Y'all say hello as you get in the building. Welcome. Happy Tuesday. All right. We're going to start with these disclosures here in a minute. Y'all say hello as y'all come in the space. We're just going to get us some soft, what I want to do tonight. Let's do some Layla. Welcome in, family. Happy Tuesday. I'm connected to my... I'm not going to try to hold us too long tonight, but it depends on where Spirit leads me.
Battery full. Connected to.
All right, we connected. So get in here. Let's get these disclosures on the way. I share my own experience on my journey to healing. I am a certified life coach, and my mission is simple: to restore the knowledge of self that's rooted in balance, truth, justice, reciprocity, and divine knowing within me. The beautiful thing is, you don't have to abandon everything that you've been taught to receive what's available. Access is already in you. Now, let me remind you of something very important. And I quote, "The works that you see me do, you can also do in even greater works than these." And you ask, how is that possible, Ty? By gaining the power within yourself. So leave me your meantime so we can unpack this topic tonight, because we're going to have a good time tonight. I don't hear my music. So if it don't apply, let it fly. If some apply and some don't, eat the meat and spit out the bones. If it all applies, eat it all and apply the knowledge. We're going to get these intentions on the way so we can hold space tonight. Y'all say hello as you get in the building. Hello, hello, hello.
Battery full. Connected to iPad and USB to BBPRBN.
I think we in business. All right, we in business. I like to have my little music there because it gives my vibe right and it gets me going. So I invite you to stand in this space, to come into this space as we go on the journey of unfolding tonight. I invite your body, but the energy, not just your body, but the energy that surrounds it, your history, your lineage, your inner child, and the parts of you that learned to survive, whether that was quiet or if you were able to speak out, whatever that is, bring it into the space tonight. Take a deep breath with me as we go on, as it moves beyond your lungs to the places where your mind keeps circling, the thoughts you can't seem to put down, the stories that you keep replaying. Sit with that for just a moment and ask yourself honestly, what has my mind been holding on to so tightly that it has turned into an obsession? Is it the point that I want to be right all the time? Is it being seen? Do I want to be understood? Ladies, do you want to be heard? Is it trying to wake up everybody to whatever it is that you want to get them to see? Is it trying to fix what was broke in you? And before you answer that, sit with it for just a moment. And as you're sitting, set the intentions to honor what's showing up in your nervous system, because obsession is in the mind. It's its way of trying to control what once made you powerless. It's in the mind trying to protect you from feeling the same wound again over and over. But tonight we recognize not everything we hold on to is meant to carry forever. So we set the intention to loosen the grip and let this be the turning point. A moment where we realize we don't have to prove our awakening to everyone. We don't have to convince everyone. We don't have to use that as a tool in order to validate our healing. Tonight we return the agency back into our own hands, because obsession pulls energy outwards, but healing pulls it back inwards. We are doing damage control tonight. We are reclaiming ourselves. So I set the intention to bring regulations, not repression, into this space, to release the pressure to fix everyone, and to return fixing what is mine, to tell the truth without turning that truth into another prison, to share wisdom without attaching my peace to who receives it, to let go of that obsession with being understood, and to rest in clarity of understanding myself. I set the intention to recognize where my mind learned to chase control, and to gently call that energy back home for my growth, for my healing, for my freedom. And in this moment, I accept the responsibility of my path. I accept all accountability and what shows up in my space, because everything that's mine starts with me, and what's yours starts with you. And I say, and so it is. Welcome in the space, family. Hotep, come in the space we are excited about tonight. quote tonight, I don't offer solution, I offer challenge. Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche. What does that mean, Ty? The point that was being made at that time is the real work is to challenge the way we were trained to think. Because when you ask deeper questions, you start living on borrowed beliefs and start building on your own understanding. In other words, a way I can put it so that you could understand, you can lean on your understanding for some things. So welcome back into the space. For those of you that are new, my name is Tyson Matawi, and I welcome you into the space where it starts with you, where there's no shame, blame, or judgment. However, we do hold ourselves and one another accountable. Y'all come in and say hello as we have this conversation. And if you want to remain anonymous, send it to my inbox so that we can unpack it, and you can remain anonymous if you want to. But if you feel free to share it in the chat as well. So we're excited tonight. Last week we unpacked damage control, what you do when the ship gets hit. And I'm talking about the physical body. What happens when you get hit left and right with all of the things? When the truth hits, when something breaks the illusion, you seal off the compartments so that the whole ship doesn't sink. And I'm not talking about a literal ship. I know how y'all like to tussle. I'm not talking about that. But I'm talking about the damage control. Once you figure out the damage, or once you're suffering with the damage, you have to ask yourself some other hard questions. What caused this damage in the first place? Did I hit something? Did something hit me? What happened? Welcome in, family. And that brings us to tonight's topic, oppression. So I'm going to start this off by putting up this circle. Inside this circle are the things that you think you know. The things that you know. And we're going to be tapping into all of the things. What you know, what you don't know. But we're also going to be paying attention to some of the things that you don't know. And it's going to be scary. But on the other side of that discomfort is where you're going to have, I'm going to say, the victory. So I immediately started to think about somebody or something that would activate me when I think of the word oppression. What does it look like to be oppressed, Ty? I immediately thought about chains or laws or violence or my favorite thing, religion. But the word itself is deeper. It's deeper than that. Oppression comes from the root meaning to press down, to weigh heavily, to burden something without pressure. With pressure. So oppression isn't always somebody or something stopping you from moving. Sometimes oppression is the pressure so consistent, it's become a habit. It's happened to you so much that you stop yourself from moving. Pressure's so tough that it's so tough on you that your opportunities, your mind, it stops the process of you being able to think properly. And what you believe is possible. And when I think about the meaning, one scripture came to mind. And now I use these things as a way to demonstrate a point. That if we take these things and we use them, not literally, but metaphysically, we can see how they show up in our lives. And it says, I saw all the oppression that are done under the sun. I saw all of the oppressions that are done under the sun. And behold, the tears of such as were the oppressed, and they held no comforter, and no one. And on the side of their oppressors, there was power. I'm going to read that one more time because I got a little stumble. And I'm okay with that. Slow down, Ty. I saw all the oppression that are done under the sun. And behold, the tears of such as were oppressed, and they had no comforter. And on the side of their oppressor, there was power. I want us to unpack that tonight. One side is tears, and the other side is power. Topic tonight, oppression. Tonight we're unpacking the narrative that was given to us by the colonizer. They gave us Christianity to manipulate and brainwash the oppressed. They didn't do that, Ty. Who are you saying is oppressed? And I'm going to say this with my chest, and I'm saying this strong and hard. If you are a part of any of those 9 pillars that contribute to the system, and we unpacked those last week, so we shouldn't have to go back through those. If you are part of any of those 9 pillars, you are a part of the problem. Look, they came into our lands and colonized us, which we're going to be touching on tonight. It's in the psyche of the system. Right now, it's the blind leading the blind. You are being led, and they convinced you with the writings of the oppressor. They gave you Jesus as a part of the manipulation tactics. They tell you we both have these things to show up for us. But they are entitled to theirs now. But you have to wait on yours until you get to heaven. Please don't say it ain't true, because they had us singing. They had our ancestors. And I remember this song that they used to say. It was a common verse. It went, I got a robe. You got a robe. All of God's children got a robe. When I get to heaven, gonna put on my robe, gonna shout all over heaven. Another part of it say, I got shoes. You got shoes. All of God's children got shoes. When I get to heaven, I'm gonna put on my shoes and I'm gonna walk all over God's heaven. That the message this gives off to us, family, is we have to wait on heaven to receive our reward. And what we don't understand is this functions as a psychological control mechanism. The system works to delay your justice by encouraging patience instead of immediate action. It oppressed people to believe their reward will come after they die, so that they are less likely to challenge the injustices that show up every day. So you'll turn the other cheek just because you know, or you think you know, because you're promised a reward in the afterlife. Because people to accept suffering in the present rather than to confront the system causing the suffering, in simple terms, that idea of waiting on heaven has shifted our focus from changing unjust conditions into the present world. The other day, I was scrolling on Facebook, the thing I like to do. I'll go on Facebook and I'll scroll a little bit. And I seen that there was a guy from my hometown, I'm assuming, because it was people from my hometown that were posting it. A child pedo received 7 years. And it was alleged to be a molestation situation. 7 years, with 4 of those years suspended. 3 on paper, 32 hours community service, $50 a month, payment towards a fine. Make that make sense. How can that make sense? How does that happen? I'll tell you how. Through oppression. A system where power is organized in one direction, because I can tell you right now, it was a white man without even knowing what he looked like. Now, when we unpack those 9 pillars, we were really looking at structures that hold that pressure in place. Those pillars keep the weight pressing down. And when you look at the system of white supremacy, what you see is a structure that historically has aligned to keep power concentrated on one side. What sides of that tie? They own the land, voting rights, educational access, economic mobility, cultural representation, religious authority. We just unpacked last week how they're operating in their, it occurs to me that they're operating in their dominion. And we are not. That don't sit right with me. That vexes my spirit to say that somebody else is operating in their God-like and we're not. And all of it reinforces the same hierarchy. And religion became one of the most powerful pillars. And I'm not saying that the other ones aren't powerful, because they're just equally as powerful. But what I'm saying is my specialty is religion. I focus on what I feel was the most impactful in my life. Because when religion is captured by a system of power, it doesn't just control your behavior, it controls it gives things meaning. It tells you who God will favor and who God cursed. For many, many years, they told us that we were cursed because we were Black people, and that's why we were suffering the way we were. That was the narrative that was painted for us. So they told us who should lead, who should submit, who should rule, and who should endure. So tonight, when I say oppressed, had no comforter, I'm talking about us. I'm talking about me. I'm talking about my place in that system. It doesn't mean just nobody cared. It means the institution that should have protected people were aligned with the oppressor instead of you. Those very pillars that should relieve pressure were reinforcing it. That's why oppression is not just physical force. It's the alignment of those systems that keep pressure in place long enough that people start believing the pressure is normal. This is normal for me. I'm not going to say anything because same story, just a different day. And when that happens on a repetitive basis, that oppression moves from the outside in. And when the system stays distorted long enough, it starts controlling your meaning. Dr. Simatawa introduced me to a theory the other day that I didn't see coming. And the theory was when people begin to believe that nothing really matters, nothing has meaning, nothing will change. It's one of the most dangerous outcomes of oppression. For you lose belief in the possibility of that power. And when oppression becomes complete, not when the chains are visible, because we don't have visible chains, but when the mind begins to accept the cage, when you become, what's the word I'm searching for? Immune to the things that happen to you. Oh, well. When you stop imagining freedom, when people stop expecting justice, when people stop believing your actions can matter, that's when the pressure has moved from the system into your mind. There are some truths we're going to have to face tonight. And we unpack those harsh truths. And tonight we have more truths to tell. Ty is going to bring the truth, because the truth shall make us free. Systems don't just survive because a few people run them. That's not how it works. They survive because millions of us Participate in them every single day. And your silence is betrayal. Welcome in, family. Your silence is betrayal. Every time you see something and not say nothing, you're complicit. You are part of that system. And some of you are knowingly doing it. And even if you don't know and it doesn't feel right and you don't say nothing. So knowing or unknowing. I'm going to say it like my ancestor Nellie Fuller used to say. If you're not a part of the solution, you are a part of the problem. But participation is still participation, conscious or unconscious. So tonight we're gonna step inside and outside of our circumference of awareness. Every time we spend money, we need to be paying attention to where we're spending it. Every time we choose convenience over consciousness, we need to be paying attention. Every time we say that's just how it is, we need to be paying attention. The system keeps moving. And family, here's the truth. The system doesn't need everyone to agree with it. You don't even have to agree with it for it to have life. It just needs enough of us to keep feeding the beast. Because once you see the system clearly, you have to decide something. Are you going to continue to feed it? Or are you going to start redirecting your power or redirecting your focus? Because if we are contributing in any way to this system that harms our own communities, then we have to be honest about that. And I have some examples for us. One example is we'll go and shop at Amazon. And I'm guilty of it because I got my cart full of Amazon stuff right now today. Just the other day, I was looking at this African lady. She went to Wells Fargo. And she sat in the bank. She had went to one bank and they wouldn't give her her own money that she put in the bank. So she went to another bank because they told her you have to go over there because they have the cash on hand. She went to another bank, sat there, and they did not give her own money that she had in the bank because they wanted to know the purpose in which she was going to use it. And because she declined, they refused to give her her money. So we'll bank with these large national banks, even when they use that against us. You need to tell me what you're doing with your money. Are you serious? And I got to tell you what I'm going to do with my money? Even when we're using social media platforms, it's owned by these large corporations. So no one is exempt, including myself. All of that feeds into a larger economic system. I know we say, Ty, we don't have a choice. We don't have a choice but to use these systems as they show up and how we shop and how we bank. We don't have a choice. Throw it in the trash because that's not true. Then I'm going to have to ask the question, are we really trapped? Or are there alternatives? I know that there's alternatives because many of the things that we say we have no choice about, we actually do. We have Black-owned alternatives. We choose not to. Everything that we can get from these retailers or these businesses, we have Black business owners. We can get toilet paper and soap from Black-owned businesses. That includes banks. And if you don't believe me, go right now to ChatGPT and type in, where is a Black-owned bank? And I guarantee you'll get a result. I guarantee you. My sis Wanda was talking about today how she went into the salon and these people just messed up her nails. Sorry, Wanda, for calling you out, but it's the truth. We got to speak out. Silence is betrayal. Messed up her nails. And I went years with experiencing going to nail shop after nail shop. I couldn't even open up the door with my nails, but without breaking one. They were so fragile. Listen, I got this cold. When I say beautiful black queen. I'm not going to see queen, black god that does my nails now. Just went today. Look, let me show you. Look at that. Can y'all see that? Look at it. I've been going to her for months. My daughter actually introduced me to her. Young girl, I think she's maybe about 23 or so. Y'all go and check her out. Her name is Kendall at KC Nails in Dallas. Go and check her out. When I tell you her work is impeccable, she does your cuticles. She put all on them. She makes sure that it ain't crooked. Make sure that you're satisfied. I've never broken one of her nails, period. She went on maternity leave in January, and I had to go somewhere else to get my nails done. And I'm telling you, it's the worst experience. And I'm trying to tell them, this is how I like them shaped. Can you shape them like this? Even show them a picture, and they refuse. Beverly pretty in the shop. I like them. I'm from Washington, D.C. They don't have it. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, when you come to town, come to Dallas, send me an inbox, and I'll link you guys up, because she does impeccable work. I call myself going to go to the get a pedicure, because she takes her time, and her schedule's like really busy, and I was like, I'm going to go and get me a pedicure, and get me a little touch up and so forth. They had me sitting there waiting for 30 minutes. I got up and left. I said, you know what? I don't have to deal with that. So we have a choice. And the craziest thing is, the first thing we'll say, well, what about the price tag? Why do they charge so much? It's because they have to pay higher prices for their stuff. So they have to charge for the labor a bit more. But if more of us start going, they can get more, they can get their stuff cheaper, and they have more money to buy it. So they don't have to charge you on the front end. And we got to understand this. So tonight, we're not just looking at oppression as something outside of us. We're looking at how these systems work. You're so beautiful. I'm ready to come to Dallas just to meet you. You keep us good. You keep up. Thank you, beautiful. I'll pin y'all out. I'll thumb y'all up later. We have to slowly reshape how we see ourselves. We have to slowly see how our futures, how our purposes, even, our ideas of God, how they show up for us. Because last week's conversation about damage control was about stopping the bleeding. Tonight's conversation about oppression is about understanding who caused this wound, and why are we still allowing it, and how do we begin to heal. So I'm going to make it personal for a minute, because I share my own personal experiences on my journey to healing. And I mean that. I mean what I say. Because this is not just theory for me. This is something I have, I've had to recognize in my own life. When I ask these questions, why does it matter? I have to sit with the fact that that I once and still sometimes contribute to this system. And how it has affected and controlled my identity. And I had to confront the ways I allowed the system to define who I was. Not always directly or with somebody or something forcing me. Nobody has always had to force me to do anything, because of this system. It just came automatic for me. So the expectations, the narratives, the religious languages that I inherited, the systems I was raised in, I had to realize that some of those ways I saw myself weren't actually coming from truth. It was because it was implanted in me. They were coming from pressure about what success should look like, what leadership should look like, what a wife should look like. They tell us all the time, I want to be like Ruth. I want to be the virtuous woman. They tell you what it should look like, what a Christian should look like. And the Christians are the biggest sinners I've ever seen. Listen, now that I've removed myself from and I don't subscribe to it, I'm a better person. I am a better person now than I was when I was a Christian. Hands down. I'm righteous. I'm not going to take nobody's stuff. I'm not going to say God bless me with it and take it out the store and I didn't pay for it. I didn't do that. I'm not going to call. I'm not going to go behind no woman's back, try to talk. I'm not doing it. I'm a better person now. And that pressure about what kind of voice is accepted, what questions I'm allowed to ask. And when you sit inside that pressure long enough, you don't realize how much your identity has been shaped by it. You begin performing versions of yourself, people pleasing, wearing masks, smiling in people's face all the time. You want to take their place. Backstabbing. Backstabbing. The most mess, and I promise you, I can tell no lies. The most mess I see when I scroll on social media comes from Christians. Hands down. I tell no lies because I don't have to. And that's what we have grown accustomed, we've grown comfortable with. You begin shrinking parts of yourself that don't fit the structure. You begin believing limits that were never actually yours. That's what oppression does at the deepest level. It reshapes you. And the moment I started seeing that in my own life, I had to realize something very important. Damage control is not just about noticing what happened. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself, myself, that pressure tried to redefine and tell me who I was. Because if the system can control your identity, it doesn't have to control you directly anymore. You'll start maintaining the limits for it without anyone telling you anything. One thing for sure is recognizing the pressure is the first step towards reclaiming who you are. But I'm going to take us deeper. And I give myself permission to do that tonight. Last week, I made a couple statements. And one of those statements was, in many ways, we are still slaves and don't even recognize it. And I want to explain what I meant by that just a little bit more, if y'all don't mind. No, we don't mind, Ty. I'll talk to myself. Y'all don't have to talk to me. I'll talk to myself. And I want to explain what I meant by that just a little bit. When I reference slave, I'm not just talking about physical change. I'm talking about a mindset. I'm talking about borrowed thinking. Let me fix it. I'm gonna reframe that just a little bit, just for the case, just for the experience in it, right? I'm gonna call it recall for the sake of argument, right? If I asked you right now what you truly desire for yourself, put it in the chat, family. What do you truly desire for yourself right now? What do you want your life to become? What purpose do you have for yourself? Most of you, I know, is going to struggle, but think about it. Put it in the chat, and I guarantee you, a couple things are going to show up. Most of you are going to struggle with it. Welcome in, family. Most of you are going to struggle with knowing what it is that you want to do. And let me put this pin in there, without referencing somebody else. When you think about it, don't reference anybody else. Don't put no rigid religious expectations. Don't put no cultural expectations. Those successes defined by the system we didn't create, don't put any of that. Come on, Dr. Simatawi. Welcome into space, Doc. A decolonial system. That's what I'm talking about. Peace, brother. Let me give you I got to throw you some hearts in the chat for that, Doc. But I'm going to follow back behind that, Doc. If you want to put it in the chat, listen, what do I actually believe? What do you desire? Who are you outside of that structure that you were raised in? We have to start asking ourselves these questions. Who am I outside of this religion? Who am I outside of these entertainments? Who am I outside of me focusing on economics? Who am I outside of this sexual experience that I'm having, this sexual addiction, these lustful thoughts? Who am I outside of that? I had to confront that because at one point I realized something very uncomfortable. If religion had been taken away from me at a point or a moment in my life, I would not have anything to stand on. I wouldn't have had, listen, I would have been lost because that's all my foundation was built on. I had built so much identity and inherited narratives that I had never examined for myself all of those beliefs that I was given until recently. I never asked myself any of these questions. What I had was what somebody told me, what I heard growing up as a child. And most of that, I took somebody's word for it, despite it not making sense. And that's dangerous because anything that prevents you from thinking can eventually prevent you from becoming whatever it is. And I'm talking about anything. And systems under this, the system understands it. The system that benefits from power concentration don't always give everyone the same thing. We've witnessed that. I just talked about a situation where I know that in the event that what was one of the blacks, they would have gave us at least 20 years for trying to be a perv and I don't know if I can say this on TikTok, but molest somebody. They wouldn't have gave us another chance. They wouldn't have gave us, 7 years, 4 of them suspended. That would have never happened. They feed themselves one kind of knowledge, and they feed the rest of us something totally different. Listen, I saw a clip of the CEO of McDonald's the other day. It had went viral. He had got online. He was going to try out his own hamburger. The brother, I'm saying brother loosely, YT, because he YT. The brother took a bite during the interview. And I don't know if it was unconscious or what, but he spit it out. You could see on his face how visibly disgusted he was by his own creation or his own product that he was selling. But that same product is what millions of you eat every day. And it made me start to think about how the system works. 98% of my food, family, and I tell no lies. 98% of my food, I prepare it at home myself. I have my own seasonings. Matter of fact, hold on. Let me grab it for y'all. Hold on. Get it real quick. Hold on. Welcome in, family. I have my own seasonings. That's my own face on this. But the system, on the other hand, will feed something to you that they won't even eat themselves. And that's when I started looking around differently. Tonight's topic is oppression. One of the ways oppression works is subtle. It's not loud. It doesn't have to be anymore. Sometimes it shows up in what's placed in your environment. Those who benefit most consume something completely different from what they distribute to everyone else. And when I say everyone else, I'm talking about us. Pay attention to the neighborhoods and the stores that we have. Pay attention to when you go to the affluent area. Notice what's there. Oftentimes, you'll find stores that prioritize fresh foods and higher quality products like a Whole Foods. But in our community, there's low income, in our low income neighborhoods, especially communities that have experienced long-term disinvestments, the landscapes that you can even look at the yards, they look different. Instead of, the full grocery stores, oftentimes they have cluster places like now that the Dollar Tree has groceries in it now. Dollar General, they put liquor stores and a church on every corner in our communities. Have you ever noticed that the liquor stores are in the Black communities? Back in the day, my mom's husband was a big Crown Royal drinker. So him and my uncle and them, they would have these sessions where they come and hang out and they commune with one another the way we do. And they used to say, hey man, you got to come early. So we got to go across the bridge. 9:00 in Dallas back then in the day. That's when the stores in South Dallas were shut down. So they had to ride across the bridge because everywhere else was dry. And for those of you that are not familiar with South Dallas, it's predominantly a Black neighborhood. Only 9% of white people are in the South Dallas community. These are statistics. Go and look them up. But they give us these bargain grocery stores where the food goes to die, where they take food from other bigger chain grocery stores and bring them to you. Pump them full of steroids to keep the meat pink and to make sure they reground the ground meat and put it in those packages, and they still sell it to you even though it was done with the shelf life at the big brands. Then they put those fast food chains like McDonald's or Burger Kings on every corner. Urban research describes this as food desert. They call it the food swamps. This is what they think of us. They call our food in our areas and then how they place those fast food restaurants and things, call it food swamps. And when you really start paying attention, you realize something. These businesses have been studying human behavior for decades. In marketing and consumer psychology, they even study colors, because colors influence how we feel and how we make decisions. Start paying attention as you go out to how many of these restaurants have red and yellow and orange in them. Start paying attention to that. And this is science. Red is going to stimulate your appetite and it creates a sense of urgency. It gives us the red light. Yellow is going to grab your attention and create excitement. Orange actually triggers hunger and it makes you make impulse decisions. Take a look at all of them. Next time when you out driving in the street, just pay attention to how many times you see red, yellow, and orange, those colors. That's why many fast food restaurants, they brand build their identity around those colors. And this should be telling us something very important. They've been studying us for a really long time. They know what environment influences behaviors. They know what colors catch our eyes. They know what makes people walk in and buy quickly and come back. Again, we are the number one consumer when it comes to spending money in this system. We spend more on Jordans and hair than the United States government spend on military equipment. Make it make sense. So when you start looking at these patterns in our communities, the stores, the food options, the marketing, you begin to see the environment. They're not accidental, they're by design. And once you see that, you shouldn't be able to just unsee. You shouldn't just be turning a blind eye to those things. That environment is shaping what people have easy access to. And years ago, Dr. Simatawi exposed me to that very thing and made me start paying attention to it. He said, because let me tell you, the brother will move somewhere and I'll be like, well, how do you know where to move? Like, what area do you move? And he said the way that he would locate these healthier environments would be based on where the Whole Food stores would be. So he knew it was healthier because there would be a Whole Foods there. At the time I heard it, but later I witnessed it for myself. So I moved into this more expensive neighborhood, beautiful homes over there. Moved into this very expensive neighborhood, and I noticed I was driving around. I went to go out to actually get me some. I don't remember what it was, but I was looking for a Family Dollar and or a General Dollar, something to that nature, because I wanted to go and get some little whatnots for the house. So I was driving around, and I couldn't find nothing nearby. So eventually I had to drive back to the predominantly Black neighborhood before I found what I was looking for. Went to go out to the grocery store. And I'm just like, man, their fruit and their produce is so vibrant and alive. Like, what's the difference? The people were friendlier. I have yet to witness an argument or anybody getting into it in a Trader Joe's or a Whole Food store. I've never seen it. I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I've never seen it. And it made something very clear to me. Oppression is not always just about laws and policies. Sometimes it's about patterns of investment and placement. What gets built? What gets funded? What gets in certain communities? Because environment influences those behaviors. And when you start paying attention, you should be able to see it. And it should give us some understanding on how quietly these systems have shaped the conditions we lived in. And that realization is what opened the door for me to start asking deeper questions about how systems of inequality actually operate. And the same thing happened with your ideas. They are given full access to their full history. They are taught philosophy. They train them in critical thinking. They study how power works, how systems form, and how narrative shapes societies. But we are given simplified versions of history that never push us to ask those deeper questions that we need to be asking. When you even look at our higher education system, here in the United States, you see it play out so, it just laid out so plain. Most universities are what scholars call PWIs. For some of you that are not aware, PWI, welcome in, family. PWI is a predominantly white institution. And many of those schools are overwhelmingly white in their student population. 92 to 94% are YT. That means the environment where many of the country's future leaders or educators are still largely shaped by one historical perspective. Now, to be clear, some of these universities do have African or African American study, and a small percentage of their students are one of us. So those schools like your Yales and your Harvards and your Princetons they have African studies, African American studies departments, but they're small departments, and most of their students never take those classes. They are electives, meaning they're optional. But before you go there, because I know how y'all like to tussle. What about the HBCU, Ty? What about our marching bands, Ty? What are they known for? Why are you not talking about those? I got you, sis. I ain't gonna leave you hanging. I'm gonna give you the education on what these HBCUs look like. We were given those schools after the Civil War because they wouldn't allow us to go to their schools. In other words, they gave it to you to shut you up. And before you get all defensive, understand the intention here isn't to tear anything down. It's to push us to think deeper. Yes, historically, Black colleges and universities were created to educate our people when the doors of other institutions were closed to us. The Howards and the Morehouses, the Spelmans. I'm from Louisiana, Southern. We had the Southerns, the Gremlins, and so on. They played powerful roles in producing Black leaders and doctors, lawyers and engineers and scholars. Whatever it was that you may have went to school for, yes, they played roles in that. I respect that. And I'm not here to take credit from anything, but we also have to ask ourselves, what kind of thinking are we actually being trained to do at these HBCUs that they so graciously given us? Because education can work in two very different ways. What ways are those, Ty? I got you. I'm gonna put you on. I got you. The two ways are, one is going to teach you what to think. The other teaches you how to think. And guess what our HBCUs do? I wait. I think we all know the answer to that question. But there's a difference. The important question for me now is not just what happened in the past. The question is what that history has left behind inside me today. What does that look like today for you, Ty? Because many of us are still reacting to a system our ancestors were forced into. They didn't volunteer into those structures. They were pushed. They was forced into them through slavery, through segregation and economic survival. But now we have to go even deeper and say, let me ask this question to myself. Are we still operating inside those same frameworks of thinking? Is that what we're doing? Sometimes we return to those stories with sympathy. We feel the pain of our ancestors. We feel the weight of what happened to them. But we can't empathize with them because we didn't experience it. And sympathy alone can keep us emotionally tied to the past, helping us understand how the system still functions today. That's why I started asking those different questions. What is happening right now, Ty? because there's a difference between recall and critical thought. And those are the two differences: what to think and how to think. And recall means you can repeat the information. You can memorize something someone gave you. You can quote scripture. You can remember those dates. You remember facts. You repeat the narrative. But critical thinking is different. Critical thinking will have you asking questions that they tell you don't ask. Don't ask no questions. Don't question God. Critical thinking will have you doing that. It'll say, who created this narrative? Where did this information come from? Come on. Where did we get this? What is the origin? Why is the structure set up this way? Not only that, who benefits from this story? Who benefits from this information that you gave me? And sometimes, even in spaces created for us, like the HBCUs, we can still be trained primarily in recall. So they got you out here thinking that you're really doing your thing when they done taught you how to think. They done taught you recall instead of thinking. And wind is blowing really hard. They've taught you what to think. And that's dangerous because systems don't always maintain control through force. Sometimes they maintain control through frameworks of thinking. That wind is blowing really hard. Welcome in, Faye. If people are trained to memorize information without questioning it, the system doesn't have to guard the chains anymore. The chains become internal. And when chains move from the outside to the inside, it becomes invisible. Uh-oh. That wind is blowing really hard. For example, we were taught about, that historically Black colleges and universities were predominantly independent creations of Black communities. But when you look closer, the story becomes more complex. Take Howard. I'm going to use Howard, for example. Howard University, established in 1867 with the support of the Freedmen's Bureau. They named it after a gentleman called Oliver Otis Howard, a Union general. And when you follow that funding stream, that supported early Black education, you begin to see the involvement from powerful industrial philanthropists. Welcome in, family. John D. Rockefeller was one that helped fund this program. We just got through last week unpacking the letter that I read, whole letter that said what their intentions were with us. So that doesn't erase the achievements of the students who studied there. I'm not taking that away from anybody, but it does reveal something important, that the narrative we inherited are often simplified versions of more complex histories. And simplified narratives are rarely designed to be questioned. And if we don't recognize that, we can end up living inside stories that were never meant to fully free us. This thing is deep. We have to examine everything connected to those 9 pillars. And we have to see how it's showing up, how we are showing up in all these things, because the same thing happens in these religious stories. All these narratives that we've been fed, it's just a cycle that repeats itself. Now, earlier we were talking about how interpretation shapes the way we understand religious stories. And this isn't just something that happens in churches. It also happens in those 9 pillars, one of them being the academic space that I just talked about. One of the spaces is the seminary schools. For example, in many seminary schools. They study the development of Christian holidays and inside courses of church history and liturgy. And since Easter is coming up, I only feel that it's right for me to talk about it, right? I gotta share her story of where this was plagiarized from. Let me use it. So, in typical seminary lecture, a professor might explain that the holiday of Easter is the central celebration of the resurrection of Jesus. Students are taught that the timing of Easter is connected to the Jewish festival of Passover, because according to the gospel narratives, the crucifixion and the resurrection took place during the Passover season. I've unpacked this before. Let me put a pin in that before I go into that. Y'all hold on a second. Go right there and pick that stuff up and let them windows down. Just push them down. Sorry, y'all. Welcome in. When I look at my journey, family, one of the hardest questions I've ever had to ask myself is, why am I struggling with the individual process of moving forward on my journey? Because honestly, I don't just, want to move forward by myself. I had the idea in my head that I need to help people along the way. I wanted to wake people up as I was going on my journey. So now when I'm sharing sharing my journey, I'm sharing it with the understanding of, something that appeared in the text. And what resonates with me when I'm unpacking this is when, the sheep hear, they will hear my voice and they'll know. That idea always stays with me, because when I heard certain information, when I saw certain things laid out historically and logically, it convinced me in a way that I couldn't resist it. So when these things start showing up for me in a space where it was like I just can't deny it, I had to sit with myself and say, hey, something in this water ain't clean. Once I saw it, I could not unsee these things that were revealing itself to me. Welcome in, family. So naturally, I assumed that if I unpack the information clearly, and I studied it and I broke these things down, that other people would experience the same thing. They would hear it and they would say, okay, that don't make sense. These contradictions are just too outlandish. I got to do it too. I unpacked it. I would lay out the history. I explained the timelines. I would get on here with presentations. I explained the historical. I explained the timeline, that they don't actually equal. With Easter, that they didn't equal a full 3 days, and they wouldn't count a partial day as a whole day. I laid it out. When I say I laid it out at a timelines, I had presentation. I had it all up on the screen. All the things. Even according to the structure of the text itself, a part of a day. This is what they was telling me. But the response I received was something very honest. People simply said, we're going to do it anyway. Even though his birthday ain't in December, if it ain't even around Christmas, we're going to do it anyway. Even if it wasn't 3 days, he still rose. And I was frustrated. I was like, put up your boots tie, because you need to be fighting these people. But then I started to understand something deeper about human psychology. Dr. Simitawa called me the young lion because I be on there. I just be wanting to go, like, just shake people. Like, why can't you see it? What about this? Just, I don't understand. But I understand now that, I realize that people are not just protecting an idea, they are protecting their identity. And at one point in my life, when I believe, my beliefs were challenged, nobody could tell me nothing. I would say nobody could tell me nothing about my God. But the evidence wasn't as clear then. I wasn't exposed to the things that I needed to be exposed to. But my brain reacted the same way. And I felt threatened when somebody was telling me something. And I was experiencing so much cognitive dissonance. That uncomfortable feeling when new information was being challenged. Those things that, we've always been told and always believed. And those beliefs are not just facts we hold. They hold together our identity, our community, our family traditions, our sense of meaning. So when those beliefs are challenged, the brain often responds defensively. And that's something I'm going to have to grieve. I got to grieve that part of myself. Is trying to get in here and be deconstructed, or I'm tired. I'm going to get in there and deconstruct and set these people straight. That's not my journey. And I'm beginning to recognize that part of this journey is separating my own thinking from the system I was raised in. Because how productive is that? If somebody would have done that to you, Ty, what would you have responded to? And I want to get on the deconstructed platform sometime and say, like, listen, how is this helping us? How are you helping somebody arguing with them about something didn't happen? What benefit is that? This is not an easy process. And it feels to me that I'm leaving people behind. That's what it felt like for me. You can't do this by yourself, Ty. You got to make sure that they know. You can't leave them behind. Just because somebody didn't tell you don't mean you can't tell people. But the text itself actually speaks about moments like this. It says, seeing what others do not see and hear what others do not hear. Whether someone interprets that spiritually or psychologically, the principle is still the same. And I'm going to share that with you right now. Welcome, Islam. Thank you, Dr. Simitawa, for the gift. I make a good time. Sometimes awareness does not arrive at the same moment for everybody. And I'm also realizing something important about enlightenment and personal growth. You cannot reach enlightenment by trying to win an argument. Let me tell you, when I was growing up, I wanted to be an attorney because I like to argue. And I never knew how much unconsciously I was just going around seeking an argument. Because listen, now that I have this voice, Doc called me young lion, I say something. I don't hold back. If I feel it, I say it. But again, you cannot reach enlightenment by trying to win an argument. The next stage of development as differentiation. And differentiation means I know what I know. And I understand why I believe what I believe. But I no longer require everyone around me to agree in order for me to continue my healing and growth. You know what they say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink? I understand it on a deeper level now. That realization brings a certain peace to me. So I can move forward knowing what I'm doing is for my own healing. So I give myself permission tonight to explore my curiosities. Thank you. I thank myself for that, giving myself an opportunity to just be curious. Now, when I looked at how religious systems are taught academically, I can see another layer. For example, the theology school and the seminaries that I was unpacking before, the professors will explain that the date of Easter was formally standardized by the church leaders during the First Council of Nicaea. And at the council, leaders decided that Easter would be celebrated on the first Sunday after the full moon following the spring equinox. That decision created a calendar system that the church still uses right now today. But pastor them ain't gonna tell you that. So in those classrooms, students are taught the theological framework of this is what happened. According to tradition and the resurrection, the early church celebrated it. And then later, the church developed a formal calendar system to determine when the celebration would occur each year. That is the academic framework most seminary students are trained in, period. And I've done my research on it. Debunk me with verified information. And for us, understanding that framework helps us see. It helped me see how religious traditions develop historical art, how they are developed historically and institutionally. And it contributes to the system. But for me, this journey has become less about proving someone wrong and more about understanding how belief, how identity, how psychology, and how history, how they all collide and interact. And how they show up today. And a deeper lesson that I learned in all of this growth does not always mean bringing everyone with you at the same time. Sometimes growth simply means continuing to walk forward in clarity. Get it for yourself. Know for thyself. Trusting that those who are ready to hear it will eventually begin asking their own questions. And when they do, the conversation can begin for them. But here's where critical thinking begins to ask deeper questions than that. Once you notice that the date of Easter is connected to the moon and the seasons, you start to see the holiday is also connected to very old patterns in nature, because you know time. And I believe that you had to know that time was going to give you the origin of where all this came from. I can't do that without telling you where it really was plagiarized from. And the spring equinox is the time of the year when the day and the nights are almost the same length. After that point in the northern hemisphere, the days begin to get longer and warmer. People have been watching these patterns in the sky for thousands of years, long before Christianity ever existed. Those ancient civilizations carefully observed the movement of the sun through the seasons. And one of the most important moments in that yearly cycle is the winter solstice. It happens around December 21st. On that day, the northern hemisphere, I'm sorry, the northern hemisphere is tilted the furthest away from the sun. And because of that tilting, the sun appears lowest in the sky. So days were shorter. They're the shortest they are the entire year. Nights are longer. And after the winter solstice, something important happened. Each day, the sun appeared a little higher in the sky, and the days slowly began to get longer again. This change is not because the sun is moving closer to the earth. It happened because the earth is tilted as the sun, as the earth is tilted as it travels around the sun. So that tilt is about 23.5 degrees, and it causes seasons. The ancient people did not have telescopes at the time, or they didn't have satellites. But they could observe these patterns. They saw that every year the sun seemed to reach its lowest point and then slowly rise and slowly rose again. And this is important because they knew that their survival depended on them knowing this. So they needed the sun for their crops. They needed it for warmth. We're not like the Neanderthals. We don't do well with the cold weather. Many cultures describe this moment symbolically as the return of the light, or the return of the sun, the sun, Ra. And those cultures use that story about the sun dying, sun, and returning again. Because that language helped people explain what they were seeing in nature. This is where symbolism shows up. Sometimes it appears in your religious languages. Let me give you an example of that. sun and son sound very same. I remember back in school that Ms. Miles would have us do words. I forget what they would call them, but they sound alike, but they were spelled different. And son are one of those words. And the sun, sun, is the star at the center of the solar system. The son is the Christian belief referred to as what they gave Jesus Christ. But our ancestors knew that the sun, sun, appeared to move in the path across the sky during the year. That path is called ecliptic. At certain points in the year, the path crossed the earth. It crossed the equator in space. Those crossing points happen during the spring and autumn equinox. Let me do this real quick. Hold on. I'm going to get this picture. I'm going to have to show it to y'all on my phone. Because I want y'all to have a vision of this. Oh. Let me see if I can take a picture of this. I'm going to share it with you guys on Facebook here. But I'm going to take a picture of it. So I want you guys to see what this looks like. I'm gonna show it to you guys on TikTok there real quick. Cool. Y'all got it on Facebook? Got it. If you didn't get it, I hope you screenshot it. Let me make sure y'all got it first. Welcome in, family. So if you can imagine what I just showed you, those 2 points crossing together with the highest and the lowest points of the sun yearly path, they form 4-point patterns in the sky. I'm going to show it to y'all. TikTok. I hope y'all can see it. Can y'all see that? And ancient astronomers recognize those 4 points as the turning points of the year. And if you draw those lines and connect the 4 seasons, they create a cross-shaped pattern that I just showed you in the cycle of the year. This is sometimes called the solar cross or the cosmic cross. But that information was taken and given to you in those religious cycles the wrong way. That is why the story gave you the rebirth, the renewal, and new life during this time of the year. And that brings us back to the deeper question. And I know I had a lot of deeper questions tonight, but this is how we're going to remain curious so we can fix this system of white supremacy and this information that they gave us. When we look at these religious traditions, when I looked at it, I can ask 2 different questions. One question is about faith. Another question is about history, culture, and nature. But critically thinking allows me to explore both. I don't have to pick who I must serve today. I don't have to do that. Remember, it says test everything, because once you understand the science of the season, you can begin to see how humans begin, how they've been always looking at the sky, watching the cycles of nature and creating stories that explain what those cycles mean. And you can move from simply just repeating a story to actually understanding the world that produced it. That's where the conversation had to become personal for me, because when you grow up as a child and you don't experience holidays through historical analysis, you experience them through joy. Easter may be your favorite holiday. It's time to question the structural narratives that they've given us, all 9 pillars of it. Because it maintains that control over you through the frameworks of your thinking, and through the process, those chains become internal. Everything that we've been given has to navigate through power structures like political systems and identity tensions. So I had a question for myself. Ty, if you're no longer trying to save everyone, then why do you do these topics? Why do they still matter to you? Why even talk about it? Why unpack the history? Why unpack the systems? Why talk about these timelines and the psychology behind the belief? For me, my answer connects to something deeper. It connects to the healing from the oppression. Dr. Simatawi said it earlier. The decolonial, he's interested in the decolonial system. That's what he desires. That should be the goal for all of us. I don't want to have to die here a slave. I don't want my children to have this land, because there's ways of you actually owning your land if you don't know that. There's ways of you not having to pay taxes on your land. There's ways of you not having to pay registration on your car every time. There's ways that you can free yourself from this system. Because those oppressions they do not only exist in physical systems. It exists in your mental system, in your thinking. And throughout history, systems of power have always tried to shape the way people think about who's in authority. They want us to think about not think about our identity. What about morality and truth? But when somebody is controlling the narrative, they often influence how entire communities understand themselves. We know nothing about ourselves. I was just thinking about this today. Every culture, they have in our city, right now in Dallas, they have a Chinatown. Asians have an Asian market. They have all these things. They have their own communities within communities, but we are the only ones that are suffering with identity crisis. That doesn't make sense for me. Why is it that we don't have on a larger scale, let me say that, and participate in and get the support from our community. We'll go out and spend money in other communities before we spend it at home because I don't like how she gonna use her money. They trained you to be that way. They pinned us against one another. Light skin against dark skin. Self-hatred was showing up all in through there. This is why we have to examine these belief systems that we were given. Not because the goal is to destroy somebody's faith. I don't get on here to do it for that. But because the goal is self-awareness. Ty is trying to be self-awareness of how I can contribute to make my life, how I can evolve. When I start questioning that system that I was raised in, I'm starting to realize a whole lot of things. Some of the ideas I had accepted without question were not things I had personally examined. I'm going to tell you right now, I never thought about some of these things. I never second guessed it. Some of them. They were things that somebody told me it was, and that's what it was. And I'm not saying that the people that taught me this were bad people. Not saying that. But healing requires something very important. Healing requires examining what shaped you. This is why this conversation matters for me, because if I want to understand how systems of oppression work, I have to understand how the systems shape the human mind. I have to understand it. I have to understand these unconscious patterns that I have that show up in me. I have to. Oppression survives when people are taught what to think and not how to think. And I'm going to say that, and I'm going to keep saying it. Use your African mind to think, Ty. And once I realized that the conversation is shifting for me, it shifted something in me. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy. But I'm going to start putting things in place. I get so excited because I started, trying to make my own ketchups and my own sauces. I'm exploring what it looks like for me to be the governor over my own stuff. And I don't have to rely on things outside of myself to provide those things for me. It's more personal than what we make it be. It's about reclaiming our minds. There's a passage that often gets quoted in the religious space. Y'all throw it around all the time that actually speaks directly about this. It says, be transformed by the renewing of the mind. And we have no idea what we're saying when we say that. But Ty's going to put y'all on. When you say be transformed by the renewing of the mind, it means that you're going to be thinking different than what you're thinking. You're going to start asking questions that you should be asking. And whether you read it as theology or simply as wisdom about human growth, the principle still applies. Transformation begins in the mind. I know they told you to think and grow rich. It ain't just the mind now. But it starts somewhere. But that healing is going to start by examining those belief systems that shaped us. Start asking some questions, Ty. So when I talk about this topic, it's not because I'm trying to save anyone moving forward. I'm sharing my healing process. I'm showing the questions I had to ask, the things I'm having to examine, the system I had to step outside of in order to start thinking for myself. And if someone listening to my journey hears something that resonates with them or resonates with you, then maybe it gives you permission to ask your own questions. Not because I told you to, but because curiosity woke something up inside of you. Nobody's trying to force anybody to do anything. but to show you what it looks like when someone begins the process of freeing their own mind. Because when one person begins to think freely, it reminds others that they can do the same. And I say that in my disclosures when I come in here. The works that you see me do, greater works you can do. Jesus gave that to y'all too. And this process is not an easy process. It's hard being in this belief. I'm gonna say 40 plus years, thinking one way for 40 plus years, having all these curiosities that you suppressed, of whether yours 20 years, 15 years, whatever it is. And the craziest thing is these kids nowadays are questioning things. They ain't just taking y'all word for stuff. They asking questions that don't make sense. But when you understand the system behind it, you can realize something very, very important. It is not weakness, it's conditioning. When a belief system is introduced to you early in your life, it becomes connected to so many parts of that identity and how you see yourself and how you see the world. So your childhood memories, your family relationship, your moral framework, your sense of safety, your community. So the belief is not just something you think. It becomes part of how your brain organizes and sees the world. And over decades, your brains has built this mental pathways around that framework, and they call it neuroplasticity. It follows these same patterns the same way because you've taught it that. And when the brain strengthened pathways, they are used repeatedly. It happens automatically. And if you think of something the same way for many years, that pathway becomes strong and automatic. You go on autopilot. So when someone begins to question that system after 30 or 40 or 10 or 15 years, the brain is not just reconsidering an idea, it is rebuilding its entire map of reality. And that takes time. And that's an uncomfortable feeling. And it's going to show up when that new information shows up, or when that conflict shows up with the belief that you've held for such a long time. It's going to show up. You're going to have those moments. And because that brain is going to try to protect those old beliefs, it's going to hold on for dear life because it feels safe for you. That's why people sometimes hear new information and still respond with silly responses out of defense. And honestly, I understand that reaction now. I do. But the young lions sometimes be like, I don't understand why you don't understand. I truly do. I understand. But that process is actually a part of what psychologists call as individuation. The process of separating your own thinking from the systems you were raised inside. And that's a process. And it's rarely comfortable. I'm going to tell you, it's very uncomfortable. It can feel like you're losing something. And I tell you, I share that is because I thought I had to come back and get y'all. And because y'all wouldn't listen, and I was losing something. And I have to grieve that. But this is evidence that your mind is recognizing itself. It is evidence that you are doing the difficult work of examining beliefs that once, went unquestioned. So what do we do now, Ty? What do you do? Where do you go from here? Because once you begin questioning the system you were raised in, once you begin unpacking the history, the timelines, the psychology behind the beliefs, you reach a point where the real work begins. That work is no longer about proving y'all to be wrong. The work is about rebuilding myself. One of the things I've noticed in many belief systems is that, we have become obsessed with rescue. We are constantly trying to save someone, save their soul, save their life, save their future. And sometimes in In the name of rescue, we hurt people thinking that we're doing God a service. That's T. We hurt people in the process of thinking that we're doing them good. And I know that's scripture. But if only we take it metaphysically, and I know y'all don't like when I say that word, but I say it anyway. But history shows us over and over again that people can become so convinced that they're defending truth that they forget to practice compassion. And that's why a real question becomes this. Ty, why don't you use the same audacity and the tenacity when it comes to understanding yourself? The effort that you put into coming in here thinking, I got to make sure they know. Why don't you use that same audacity for you? As I talk to myself, you talk to yourself. Why don't you apply that same energy to examine the systems that shaped your thinking? Some of the early philosophical groups describe knowledge as a kind of awakening. One of the traditions was called, the Gnostics go by, is their central idea was not about rescuing everyone else. It was about knowing themselves. So I'm going to say it in your sense. It's about knowing yourself. Because a person cannot live a fulfilled life simply by becoming what society expected them to be. And the Gnostics understood this. They understood that human life does not fulfill its purpose if someone spends their entire existence secretly performing the role that society wrote for them. So let me put it in your words. I understand that the idea of being last, but I'll be first at one point, and I'll walk on these streets of gold, and I'll get my reward when I get to heaven. That's what somebody else wrote for me. And I understand that I can't become my true self by quietly becoming what they told me I was going to inherit. You will not become your true self by going by what they gave you, because it was a lie. But a realization that happens during this process, real growth does not require destroying everything that I once believed. Because now that I know that I can look at these things metaphysically, that I don't have to take somebody else's word for it, that I can see how it shows up in my own life. Oops. That I can examine it for myself, that I can question it for myself. Oops. I don't have to tear everything down. Welcome in. I'm sorry, family. I had put my phone on the thing. I'm so sorry. Hey, Miss. Hey, Auntie. Hey, Miss Rhonda. Hello, beautiful. I'm sorry, y'all. I had put my phone down, and I didn't even see y'all comments or y'all come in here. So it's some truth that came from this. And I want to share that with you so that hopefully you can hear it and use it for yourself. You cannot force someone to give up something they don't see the illusion in. And I can't drag you into awareness before you're ready. You have to want it for yourself. Now, it's a difference when I'm saying, you have to want it for yourself. And if you're saying, I want it, Ty, I just don't know how. That's the point. We need to start asking questions. So we need to start exploring what's showing up in our conscious and our unconscious behavior. Every person has to has their own moment of recognition, their own moment of question, their own moment where the old framework no longer holds true. And I've had that moment of reckoning. I had a lot of moments of, seeing that I don't want to live how I used to live. I don't want to be the person that I was because I wasn't a better person then. I'm a better person now than I've ever been. And right now I have less friends. I have less family members around me. And it bothered me. That bothered me for a really long time. I think I've grieved a lot of it, but unconsciously I'm still holding on some things and I'm having to explore those things. But it leaves me here focusing on my healing, the things that are showing up in those spaces for me. Now that we know, Ty, that this system that's created is the biggest contributor to those unconscious behaviors that you can't see in yourself. What do? I'm focusing now on understanding how that system shaped my thinking. I'm focusing on building a deeper foundation for my own life. And if someone hears something that I'm saying while I'm explaining this, maybe it'll help bring you towards enlightenment. But I know now that enlightenment can't be forced, it can only be discovered. And the final lesson I've learned through all of this is the goal of life is not simply to inherit meaning, it's to create it consciously. Because the person who truly awakens is not one who spends their life fighting that old system. It's one who learns how to stand beyond them, calm, enlightened, and clear, and peaceful, and fully responsible for the meaning they choose to live by, not what somebody else gives them. And that's where the real work is. Beyond that pain, beyond that discomfort, beyond the struggle is where healing is. But I'm gonna end. I'm gonna end because I made it right before 2. I've been on here almost 2 hours. I'm gonna share this quote with you guys, and I'm gonna get out of here. He who has awakened cannot spend his life arguing with those still dreaming. That was so good. Say it one more time, Ty. He who has awakened cannot spend his life arguing with those still dreaming. The task is not for me to try to drag the world into my light. The task is to become strong enough to walk in it alone. And the beautiful part is I have a beautiful partner that has identified his light. And I was still holding on to those beliefs, and that does something to me. I'm over here trying to pull y'all along, So for the one who learns to think for himself has always broken the oldest chain. Love you too, Auntie. And I'm breaking every chain. So y'all can say it as much as you want to. And in the church, I'm breaking every chain. You're not. Until you start learning to question, until you start learning to think for yourself. And I'm not telling you what I think. I'm telling you what I know. You're not breaking any chains. And once a mind has tasted freedom, it can never again live comfortable inside a cage. I know that. I feel so much freer now. I do. I'm a better person because of it. That's it for me, family. I'm going to bid you guys a good night. I hope you guys enjoyed the teaching. Go back and rewatch it. Hold space with it. It was some beautiful things in it about oppression and how it shows up in those 9 pillars. We need to start asking some questions, family. Y'all got to ask questions like, what is this structure? Why is this here. Why are we doing this? Why am I doing this? Is this me? What's showing up in my life? Hotep.